to ensure that all people have equal rights, have equal access, and have the ability to have a joyful, happy life and to be able to thrive. And it's not a nice to have. It's not an extra. It's not a, if we have the money in the budget, we'll do it. It is a must. It is a core government function. And it is, what we spend money on represents and shows what our values are, which is why I know we're here to talk about House Bill 5001, and not just to talk about it, to take your viewpoints, your concerns, your priorities, make it a better bill, pass it in the House, get it passed in the Senate, and have the governor sign it, and we have 6 weeks to do it. So the timing of this is great, and we really want to hear from you. So thanks again for being here and for what you're going to be doing for the next hour, which is sharing your concerns and priorities. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is James Sanchez, representative for Hartford and West Hartford. It's my first term. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor to be here. And I appreciate what my colleagues have shared with everyone here. I'm also here to learn about your concerns, to hear your concerns. I'm also here to learn about 5001 as well. I read a portion of it, but when it came across my desk, it really touched me emotionally, right? I was a guardian for my brother when I was 16 and he was 15, and he resided in Southbury Training School. So I do literally know or have the experience and understand what everyone here is going through, as well as thousands of families, right? And I know, and excuse me if I'm going to be, pretty open, but I feel that one of the concerns here for our senior parents who are taking care of senior children, right, is what's going to happen to my child when I'm gone. So that's a real issue. The real issue also is transportation, work opportunities, and other opportunities. But the real issue is what's going to happen to my child when I'm gone. And that's what I want to hear from you guys. And, after this meeting and when you go home, if you don't mind, please Google Edwin Sanchez Southbury Training School. And the reason why I mentioned Southbury Training School is because that was a facility or the grounds. It was more of a campus, college-type campus for individuals, IDD and autism, that used to have a maximum of 1,200 beds. It was an amazing place. It's like a little town. And then, for some reason, somehow, we have another organization that's been fighting, accusing that it was not the right location or right experience for IDD and autism, which was wrong. I'll stop right there, but then I can share my story later on if you guys are more interested in hearing what I went through. Because, we have community homes, and community homes is not for everyone, not for every IDD or autistic person, all right? Southbury Training School right now is at 120 beds. I'm going to fight to grow that back to the 1,200 beds it used to be. It's a place of freedom. It's a place for our children that have this disability to roam and call home. It's a place that they can call their own little town. So I'll leave it at that. So I am here to listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. And with that, we will turn it over to you all. Juliana, are you going to be able to pass out the microphone? Okay. Great. Thank you. Yeah, we're filming, so you do have to speak into a microphone, please.
First of all, thank you so much for chairing this meeting and for inviting us to come and speak to you, because we You don't get that opportunity all the time. I'm usually sitting down at the legislature waiting until 6, 7, 8 o'clock at night to get onto the list. So I appreciate the fact that you've come and visited West Hartford and put this together. I'm absolutely amazed by the comprehensiveness of 5001. It has got so many of those things that I've fought for many, many, many years. You know, recognition by the employer, or support for employers who help those that have disabilities. My daughter worked for 25 years at Reed & Regal Law Firm downtown. And she would come home every day and I would say, "How was your day today?" She said, "It was fantastic." She said, "I have the nicest coworkers and the nicest people in the world." And that meant a lot to us, but she's been out of work for 3 years. Absolutely nothing to do, and all of that self-esteem and the individualism and getting back and forth to work. I wasn't going to speak about transportation, but that's kind of ingrained in my background too. I don't know if anybody has heard of the Kennedy Center, but the Kennedy Center is an organization that does bus training, and my daughter did a lot of that bus training, and she would take the bus every day back and forth to work. As a matter of fact, one year they did a TV special on people with disabilities riding the bus, and the next week, I've ridden the bus for 45 years. And the next week, I was sitting there, and I looked up, and there's this cardboard cutout. You know how they put them in the bus of different advertisements? And I'm looking up, and I said, "That looks like my daughter." Son of a gun, it is my daughter. They had made a cardboard carton out of a picture of her up for the bus. Really, really surprising. But anyway, employment. Employment is something we really need to do a better job with for those with disabilities. There are certain organizations that have done a fantastic job. HARC is one of them. Supported employment workspaces in Hartford. I forget how many we had, but we've gone down less than half from what we had, 4 or 5 years ago. The other thing is that training for the people who work with those with disabilities. I really believe that we need to do a better job in training. These people work themselves day in and day out. I wish people could be down in the lobby of the HARC building at 3 o'clock when these people are coming in and going home to see the dedication of the individuals that work with us. They're absolutely fantastic. So we've got a long ways to go, and funding is going to be the start of it. We have to do a better job with funding, but I do hope that you individuals will take the time to visit with the Barry Simons and the Russell Colemans, those that are the CEOs who have been doing this kind of like I have for 45 years. And if we can help you, maybe those ideas and ideals that are in 5001 will become more than just words. They'll actually be part of our lives.
Thank you so much.
Good evening. I'm Jane Thierfeld Brown. I appreciate everything you did to put this together tonight. I know a lot of the people that are here, and we've all been together for many years. I'm thrilled about 5001. I'm concerned that we've got 6 weeks. And if I'm to ask a question, it's what can we all do now to make this happen? We've waited a long time. I have a son who's 31 who gets services through Bristol Adult Resource Center. We're in good shape in that he has services. We're not in good shape in that the staff is so underpaid. We can't get people to work. I'm on the board at Bristol Adult Resource Center, and I'm the past president. We can't get people to take the jobs, mainly because they're so low pay, and especially since the pandemic. So we have people working double, triple shifts. This isn't safe. We all know it. We don't want it happening, but there is nothing we can do unless we have support. And that's for the people who have services. personally, I have my son. Professionally, I do a lot of work. Now, I was in higher ed for 44 years. I'm now working within just the autism community. I run a group nationally called College Autism Spectrum. We are so woefully behind in Connecticut. I do this work on transition and education nationally, and we need to bring what I'm seeing in a lot of these states here, because we are not doing what even the places like Arkansas and Alabama and South Carolina are doing. And we need to fix that quickly. We not only need money for that, but I also work with the Bureau of Rehab Services on their autism committee, and we work with 3 families per month helping on employment issues. We need to work with 50 families a month. And yet we can't. There aren't enough people, there aren't enough time, isn't enough money, and there aren't enough jobs. I have way too much to say, and I don't want to take everybody's time, so I'm more than happy to put things into an email. I want to help. I want this to be passed. And please know that many of us here appreciate what you're doing, and we've been doing this for decades. And I want to know when we stop doing this and start using the time with the individuals. I want to be part of my work. I work for many years. I've worked for Travelers supporting their autistic employees. They let me support their autistic employees and those people's supervisors. Why is it just at one corporation at Hartford? And yet when we try and go into other corporations, they're like, that's such a nice thing to do. No, it's not nice. It's essential. So we need to be doing a lot more of this, and yet why do I have to get on a plane and go do it in other states? And why can't I do it in Connecticut and West Hartford? I'll leave it with that, because all of my very good peers here and parents have a lot more to add. Thank you.
Yeah.
I just wanted to respond to your question about, what you can do, because we do have a limited amount of time this session, and 5001 is critically important, and I think the speaker and many others in the House and the Senate too are putting their muscle behind it, and I'm optimistic about it. But we need to also, and I mean, you touched on this part of the equation, is I believe we must increase funding for our nonprofits, right? It's critical. And the governor's budget, as you know, proposed 0 funding. The appropriations 1%, which, if you add in inflation, is a cut. And so I would just urge you, if you can, I know we all have a lot on our plate, but if you can, is to reach out to your friends and family members, not just in West Hartford. I mean, I'll use the cliche, you're preaching to the choir here, but to folks in lawmakers and the governor's office, but in other parts of the state, Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter, and tell them that we can't pass a budget with just a 1% increase for nonprofits, because that'll help with the access and with the employment, right, and the services. Yeah.
I just wanted to comment that when it comes to the wait list, that's been a big piece of the conversation. When we're having these meetings, it's like, okay, great, you do need to address the wait list, but even if we are able to and want to address the wait list, then what do we do about there not being staff and there not being the services because we don't have the workforce? Yeah. At best. Yes. Yep. And then we've asked, what's the true wait list? Because if you know it's 7 years long, would you even get on it? So how many people, actually need services?
Thank you. I'd like to just basically echo a lot of the same comments about staff training has definitely been an issue for the services that my family members have received. I think there needs to be activities because it's less expensive, more bang for the buck, and we can control the quality of the services. We still have the same issue with hiring, but one of the main reasons I came was because I'm planning on retiring next month and thinking about how my 33-year-old daughter will still be with us for who knows how many years. And, you know, the thoughts that everybody have about, you know, having a retirement and traveling and doing all those fun things are not going to be my reality at all. So, you know, I'd like to see, you know, help with the housing situation. I think perhaps people that are in CLAs might be able to move into different modalities, people that are less affected into the group settings if they're done appropriately. Everything seems to be, the most important thing is that they're done thoughtfully and individually. And having a very affected son, you know, I think it's very important that we always keep in mind that the group that is most affected, because they have the most difficulties accessing everything from medical services to residential services to day services to everything. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just wanted to follow up and thank you for your comments briefly, because I just wanted to comment a little bit about the housing piece of it. I did want to mention, I know Representative Gilchrist noted that housing is being looked at as a full part of this comprehensive package. I think some of the potential for that is on part of what we call bonding in our state. So on the Finance, Revenue, and Bonding Committee, we pass what's referred to as the bond package, which is how are we going to borrow in our state to actually build capital projects. And I would say one of the areas that our governor and subsequently our Finance Committee last week, you know, we put forward you know, $500 to $600 million in bond support for greater housing development in our state, recognizing we are really in quite a crisis in our state for, you know, accessible and affordable housing. And one of the areas that I think is of keen interest to a lot of legislators and will be noted in 5001 is this key need of housing. And so I really just want to reiterate that I think some of the opportunity there could be how we fund this through bonding, through capital expenditures, to make sure that as we're investing these dollars in some of these housing developments, that we're thinking about some of the continuum of needs, especially for individuals with IDD or autism. So I just wanted to mention that to you in regards to, I think, how we're trying to think about some of the funding for this potentially too. So thank you for noting that. Yeah, it was very helpful.
I'm short, so I'll turn this down here. I'm Pam Don Roma, and I'm on the DD Council. I'm also the CEO of Futures, which is a nonprofit here in West Hartford. We have a number of social enterprises as well as a school. There's so much to say, so I'll try to focus only on a few things. I'd really encourage you to look at the report that the task force completed. They did a task force for some of the challenges around the IDD population, and it was kind of a very frustrating situation because it started prior to COVID and then ended. I know that Dr. Orv Karen was the chair of the committee, and I think he was very frustrated because they spent years doing, you know, having a number of presenters and completing the report, and he feels like nobody's looking at it. So I'd really encourage you to look at it before looking at doing other kinds of research. So, you know, Futures has really been involved in creative employment opportunities. And so with Darlene Boré, who's not here because she broke her leg. So I know that one of her passions is the microenterprise and making sure that the income limits are increased because it's been a real barrier some of our businesses have become very successful, and we've had to put the brakes on them because it's, we're concerned that the individuals might lose some of their benefits. And, the challenge also is we don't have any staff. We can't pay people $17.25 an hour, when they can go to McDonald's or Walgreens and make more. And they're not being trained. They're not getting the kind of training that they need. And also, I know this is a concern, and I know that Darlene would be happy if I shared this, is there's no sort of salary adjustment for people that are working with some really challenging individuals. So if you're supporting somebody with a low lawn score, you're going to get the same compensation as somebody who's very, very challenging. And the skill set should be a lot different. Did I catch everything, Christine? So anyway, there's so much and transportation is an issue as well. That's a real barrier. So thank you.
Before you head out, what committee had the report?
I'm not sure. It was a task force by I could find out, but I know the chair was Dr. Orv Karen.
And it was at the legislature?
Yes, yes. And they had presentations by housing, assisted technology, employment, pretty much, the spectrum of services.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, good evening. Thank you again for everything that you're doing. So my daughter's turning 21, so she's still under the public school system. She hasn't transitioned into the adult world. She's at Future, so shout out to Pam. It's been a great experience for her. And she also has a micro enterprise selling soap that she makes in the shape of a dog, which is at Good Cause Gifts if you want to go buy some. So that program is fantastic, and Darlene has been doing a great job with it too. So I don't have a lot of experience, but I do have a question, because I know when we were trying to look into getting benefits for my daughter, and I don't know if this is still true, but I was told that there's only, and you mentioned about autism, but I don't know about IDD, only one thing, which is IQ. And I don't know if your bill is also looking into making that more expansive for IDD as well as autism. And I was also told by a psychologist who did an evaluation of my daughter that the current number in Connecticut is 70, and actually nationally the professional psychologists say 69 should be so we're not even at the right number according to what the psychologist said. So I don't know if that's true or not. If that's still true, this was years ago and it may have been changed, but I would think it would make more sense to have a vetting system that does more than just IQ, but would look at needs and all sorts of other things, which I think a lot of other states do. I was looking into Massachusetts at one point. So that's really all I wanted to share with you. But thank you for all of your hard work.
Thank you, Judy, and it's good to see you. So one of the things that we're trying to address in this is to do a task group, a work group around IQ, whether or not that should be the measure versus looking at level of need. And getting rid of the IQ altogether is 69 now. But getting rid of that altogether, like most of the states, I think only Arkansas still uses an IQ.
For both IDD and autism?
Yes.
Okay, because I came in late, so I may have missed part of what you were saying.
Yes, that's my understanding. And I think that's really important for us to do, to really look at the level of need. And I would love to see us approach this. One of the things that I work very closely with is the autism community, and I'm on there's an autism spectrum disorder advisory council, and I'm a member of that at the state level as well. And that is what they are very interested in looking at as well, because oftentimes when you look at the waiver, I question whether or not all the services on the waiver, every single person wants identical services. So it could be that you could serve more people because you're looking at their need as opposed to just the IQ. So that is something that I am very interested in seeing how this will be, the outcome of this. It's really important for us to look at more closely.
I completely agree, and I think IQ, all testing is kind of arbitrary, and I just even saw that with my daughter because the numbers varied depending
Absolutely.
on different things. So it's not really a very good measure, I don't think.
Absolutely, absolutely. I totally agree.
I am Michael Strauss. I have 3 special needs kids. Here's Meg and Nathan, who's here. My son Chris is at his art class.
Chris
But,
is a wonderful artist.
Yes.
Just will say.
And he sells his cards at Whole Foods. So if you ever notice it there, yeah. But certainly the asset limitation is a very important issue for us, especially managing 3 kids. The amount of stress and unnecessary time running to the, especially my wife, running to the bank, making sure the money's withdrawn. It's very stressful, very time consuming, and to increase the asset limitation would make a big difference in our lives. And just in general, the employment situation, for instance, our son Chris was working at, he works through Favar at the, he was working at the Michaels in Avon, where they had a crew, and with COVID, they eliminated the crew. Now he's basically working on the cleaning crew at Favar. It's definitely, and what sort of drives me crazy is that looking at the low unemployment rates, why can't more, it seems that there are fewer opportunities, and I'm still scratching my head about that. And it's anything, and I know there's some tax incentives that could be, and my wife, Christine, who's on the council, has been advocating for a long time for some sort of tax incentives for employment. Just as an aside on transportation, my son Nathan, we've been trying to work on other opportunities, but one of the big blocks is transportation. We live in West Hartford. You'd think that would be an issue, but the bus does not stop at our house for some reason. It stops a lot of other places, but that's definitely been an issue. Our oldest son, Chris, a couple years ago, we were fortunate that he was able to move into the IDASH complex in Canton. Certainly overall it's been a blessing, but obviously there's been challenges in terms of the staffing, but I think overall, at least for him, that works. He has a roommate, and he gets some supervision from the staff, but I know that's something the state should be looking into more. Let's see what. So yeah, definitely, and my daughter Meg has been on the waiting list for a long time, and I think she's definitely ready before we get a lot older, so that she has a transition, so we're still in her lives, but it's definitely been difficult meeting her needs. So thank you very much, and thank you so much for being here tonight. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
I just want to thank you all for having these meetings over and over and over again, because as a person who never participated, you guys make it very easy to become participants. And I truly do appreciate how open and available you guys are making this. I have two comments. It is frustrating as a Connecticut citizen to recognize that our tax dollars are leaving the state more than they're coming into our state. And there are states that handle transportation for those who cannot transport themselves so much better, and they do it by partially funding with federal dollars. And so we are missing an opportunity to get our tax dollars back to work for us. I'm from California, and we have a tremendous program for elderly, for intellectually disabled, IDD and physical disabilities. It's already a program that works, and it's already a program that's funded almost entirely by dollars that are set aside for that through the federal government. So I think we could do better with our tax dollars and getting that money back for us. The second thing I'd like to say is my degree is in physics, and my minor was in psychology. And one of the things that really infuriates me is the use of the IQ test. And so I would just like to share with you, because sometimes anecdotes are really useful. When my son was 3 years old, he went into the school system and they did testing. And they came back and he had an IQ of 74. And I told them that was impossible, because there are German shepherds who are better trained and have a better sense of self than my son. He is profoundly autistic. And I said, I'm going to give you one chance to redo this, and then you're going to have to justify that number to someone else. And she came back and said, his real number is 54, but I just couldn't give that to you. That is the difference between getting services and not getting services. So I need you to know that there is tremendous prejudice when it comes to IQ testing. Also, I don't know if you know the history of the Stanford-Binet development of the IQ test, but it is sexist, it is racist, and I would be happy to tell you the entirety of the story. In some, it is by people who had good thoughts, but they created the best test they could, gave it to a number of people, because people of color and white men, we're just talking men, black men and white men did just as well as long as they were socially, economically the same. So that meant that the test was wrong. And women did really well. So that also meant the test was wrong. And they changed it. So this is the history of the IQ test.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Can I just ask you, if you don't mind, about you referenced in California, were you referencing kind of a transportation service, I assume, that they have available?
Yes, there's
Yeah.
a couple of them.
Yeah.
I did kind of look it up just so that I had it available to me. One is called the non-medical transportation. It's Medi-Cal.
Mm-hmm.
It's funded through Medi-Cal. There's also just Access, which when my parents were getting older and could no longer drive because they really needed to stop driving.
Right.
It cost like $3.
Yes.
It was almost nothing, but you had to get registered.
Yeah.
You had to confirm that, yes, you are an elderly person.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, you cannot drive yourself. Yes, there are. It was also a scale charge
Mm-hmm.
per ride.
Mm-hmm.
But they would pick them up, and it was very sociable, and it was lovely. And it was easy all around. And it works. Right now, it works.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, I really appreciate you noting that. As I might have said earlier, we have some communities around our state who have, again, some of these services transportation-wise, but again, we're not united as a state in our approach on this, so I really appreciate you noting that. Thank you.
And if I may just make a comment regarding what you said about the IQ, just to show how a number can make such an impact, whether or not you get services and who is doing the evaluation. And imagine that that number is just, I don't know, say the IQ is 69, but the score was 74. It still doesn't, that doesn't mean that person doesn't need some support. So looking at the need really would get and identify what the person actually requires. And that's why I'm just such a big advocate for that, and I thank you for highlighting that about the IQ. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for your support of House Bill 501. My name is Gail Winchin. I'm the in-house counsel, and I serve on the executive team of Oak Hill. So we are very grateful for all of your advocacy on this issue. And I just want to speak to something that I know has been raised, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here, and that is funding for our staffing. We have vacant beds. We can serve people we want to serve people in the community, and we can't because we can't hire people. We have had to mothball some of our group homes because we can't staff them, and we can't keep people safe in them. We are a proud unionized employer with 1199. I had to sit in union negotiations last week on the heels of the budget numbers of 1% and nothing to tell our employees that our health insurance premiums are going up 16%. So when you factor in the cost of inflation and the cost of premiums, they are taking a pay cut. That feels terrible. It is the worst part of my job. As people here have said, the people who provide services to the individuals we serve, I think, are doing the Lord's work. And they deserve the recognition and the value and the respect for the work that they're doing. I invite each and every one of you to tour our programs. I know Jillian was supposed to come out a week or so ago and you got caught up in all the budget mayhem. You know, what we do is pretty remarkable. So I know I appreciate Bob giving a shout out to my boss, Barry Simon. We have been very involved with the Nonprofit Alliance, asking for increases of our rates of 9% this coming fiscal year and then 7% after that. You know, the thing about being in the nonprofit space is that, you know, when the budget is really bad, it's, oh, well, we can't help you this year because we have no money. And now the state has so much money, and now we have to put up guardrails, right? And so I know you hear all of this. I can't sit here and just not say anything. So again, I appreciate you, and to the parents in the room, I invite you to go to the legislative office building, let them see you, let the governor see you, let the decision makers see you, and make your voices heard. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Christine Hainsworth-Strauss. I think I've met all of you now. I'm going to speak both as a parent, as an advocate, and as a DDS council member. So try and see the layers here, but I'll try to keep my comments very short. I guess the biggest thing, and as we heard from about Mr. Sanchez, there's no cookie cutter solution. I think that's the problem that I see from a macro perspective. And I think that we need to really, our son was fortunate enough to move out. He has learned new skills that we have been thrilled to see him learn. He does need a lot of support still. And as we age and as we have one child with medical issues, that becomes overwhelming. We have no help since COVID. I used to have 6 hours a day. I have 1 day a week where I have 3 hours where I'm alone, and I'm usually taking another child to another appointment. So COVID has affected greatly this population, and I think I would say of our children, probably the one that's the most affected is the last one out, because he was trained to be, he was working in a program at the Attorney General's office doing paperwork and processing, and that job only was with the school district because it was unpaid, and it was a time when the state also could not hire. It was a hiring freeze. So he came out, and then COVID happened. So the skills that have been lost, the social skills that have been lost, because he's also autistic, he's on autism spectrum, I can't even begin to tell you the magnitude of the difference. And knowing that there are not jobs out there, unfortunately he works with Futures, and he has a couple days a week with that. My other two children are with FAVAR. One who went from he'd worked from sub-minimum wage up to legitimate minimum wage for the job at Michael's, and then they've made all kinds of excuses about not having that cohort back. And it was sad because it was really a premier program. It was the only one in the country at Michael's that was a paid position, not a school unpaid training ground. So I do see, and I can be happy to discuss this with anybody at any time. But there is a need for sub-minimum wage. There is a need for minimum wage, and there is a need for working our way to that. Having seen all three cases, I know that my daughter would not have work unless she had some minimum wage support. I know that my other son makes minimum wage and works hard and does a great job. So those are some of the issues. I would also want to say, and I should have started with this because I meant to, Connecticut has a tremendous number of people who are natural support. We noticed the difference. We lived on both coasts and then moved here. And the first day we visited this town, we actually were not stared at for the first time in our lives. That's huge. When you actually notice it from walking around, you notice there's a difference. And there have been so many wonderful programs in the school district, and I worked with the school district head to create social programs and change some of the school programs each year too. But this has become a full-time job for me. I no longer work. I also don't get paid to take care of the kids, so this has a long-term ramification after over 20 years of doing it. But it has to be done. So the no cookie cutter solutions for both residential and for jobs and for transit. We got approved, went through the whole ADD process, took 6 months, and then it doesn't come down our street. So it did us no good. The child could not be transported to work. I did, years ago, at the IDD caucus, raise the question of getting some kind of tax credit for those who would hire. Our son, who does have a business, and I run his business, he used to hire his peers to stuff his cards. He can no longer do that the way things are structured, and with asset limitations, we cannot grow his business. It's been a very tough tightrope I've had to walk with all this for years and years and years, and yet he has the capacity to sell more cards. He's been a successful vendor with Whole Foods and Amazon for over a decade. He's been a bestseller. We sell them on the art, not on who he is. The story is a bonus to us on the back. But every step has taken so much advocacy to qualify any of these things. So I think if we can get some way to have more natural supports around transportation, more natural supports around employment, and I've actually run into people who have small businesses who say, if I knew there was a need, I'd find a way to hire somebody. And that was a shock to me. This just happened a few weeks ago, and it really shocked me that somebody said that. Because to me, it's always in my face. I do want to say, I would like to know what better statistics you'd like to hear from the department, because that would be helpful to know being on the council. So if someone would reach out to me, that would be very helpful to know. And we have, I hope the population has felt the benefit of the redetermination process that is required by the state, that has to do with the asset limitations, that has to do with everything else for them to continue to get their DSS funding, for the Husky C, for job coaches, for all the things that are tied to that. And I'm sorry, I'm trying to make this as fast as possible, but with 3, the issues are multiplied. So the micro transportation thing would be a very interesting thing. And I think that we have personally experienced where people, after we have qualified for services with a couple children that are borderline, who definitely need supports, we have been challenged over again to be IQ tested and IQ tested. And it didn't even just take, and one of the things I have a problem with the CFC program too, which is funded through Medicaid, I think Medicaid. The questions that they ask you when you're filling these out as a parent, you want your child to look as successful as possible. So you start to mark down, yes, they can do this, they can shower themselves, and you don't realize that you've already put in a separate shower valve that won't burn them, that you have to stand outside and make sure that they don't fall, that you have to go in, and there's all these things that you do. That's not on the forms. It's not something you can get qualified for or unqualified for. There's no, and then like CFC, it's like in the last 24 hours did this occur? For something that's cyclical, for instance, seizures, your life is a lot different when you're in the middle of a long section of those. So, whatever measure you start to use, maybe it could be broader in length, like a month, or what is a typical week like, or whatever, because the 3 days that the federal government uses is just, it's inaccurate. that's about it, but I'm sure there's more. But I want to thank you so much for doing this. I'm so excited about this bill. I just, when I saw it and heard about it the first time, I couldn't have been more excited. So thank you for trying to make progress on all these issues. And you know what else we can do besides talking to you guys, our elected officials? If there's somebody else that we should contact on the state level, please let us know.
Thank you so much.
Hi, Mike and Nancy Ryan. Our son Carter's 48. First, I want to pay tribute to you. We get stressed out with Carter's issues. Juggling with the 3 issues and the asset and all of that, I'm really impressed. I know it's tough. Thank you for hanging in there for your children. Really appreciate that. We've been very fortunate. Carter's been getting services for 20 years. But this business of the wait list, 20 years ago it was an issue. So whatever you can do on that for people who need it, it's just sort of, so awful for people. And on the employment issue for staff, Carter is among those who gets independent supports. We were able to hire people to come into his apartment. He lives independently with money that's handled from the state through an intermediary. That's really hard too. So in addition to all the staffing for the agencies, for those of us who are dealing with it on an independent basis, it's extremely hard. And the pandemic affects all this, of course. Just 2 other quick things. One, just because Representative Gilchrist, you mentioned the ABLE account. We switched to the Ohio ABLE account because the agency that handles Connecticut's was so difficult to deal with. I just gave up, honestly. And the Ohio one's real simple. So just for future reference. And then one other thing I want to just mention, this is beyond what you're doing with this particular bill, but as our kids age, and particularly those who are more or less independent, the issue of dementia starts to arise. You probably know that Down syndrome, for example, which the Heart has, as they get into their 50s and 60s, it's like 50 to 70% likelihood of getting something like Alzheimer's. So they're going to need a different level of care. It may just be like anybody else who goes to a nursing home, but it's another issue down there that's facing our population. Thank you all for what you do.
Thank you so much, and that's what came up in the conversation about the ABLE account. I don't know who currently oversees it. Do you know what?
Well, it's through the comptroller's office, but the Connecticut uses an agency that provides services for several states. And I just found them almost impossible to communicate with.
And that's what we were told, so it's supposed to take this new fresh look at it, and how can we?
That would be good, but
Okay.
you don't have to go to your state's one, so a lot of us use the one in Ohio, which is much simpler.
Well, to the point that was made earlier, these, to know that, to bring that back, thank you, and say people are using another state. And then interestingly, our colleague, Representative Hughes, who works with the aging population, actually reached out to say you should really be thinking also about dementia with this. So thank you for raising that as well.
Hi, my name is Mary Hardy, and I have a daughter who is on the spectrum. She does not qualify for IDD, and yet she can't live alone right now. I mean, an emergency to her would be that there's a dead bug on the floor, and all she could do would be to scream. She needs some support beyond that. May seem silly to us, but it's just absolutely paralyzing. Her IQ is over 70. We, in looking for a job, that was so difficult because with an IQ over 70, you have to compete with the typical population. And with slow processing, it's not going to happen, really. So another thing was that places would not have a job coach for cashiering because of the liability. And so ultimately, HARC is the one that helped us get off the ground. with the store in town, Sock Stars. She was hired there, and they had the job coach as a part of the business. So she gained confidence in being able to cashier, and she now works part-time as a cashier. She's on the spectrum, anxiety is over the top. So we've gotten her to the point where she can stay alone overnight, one night. So we're moving in that direction, of trying to make her independent. Transportation, when we did our move, we moved so that we would be within a block of transportation. She's very good at that, but we also, when kids are getting their driver's licenses, I think we paid through the nose for all the driving instruction we got with the instructor. I mean, I don't know how many hours going around town and everything, but she did finally get her driver's license, but she can only drive, off of the highways and around town, but that's so much more independence. She can get herself to work. So I'm glad that we're looking at employment, because there's a lot of people in that category of an IQ over 70, but and it's assumed that they can compete equally with others with an IQ over 70, and that assumption just doesn't work. So our other thing is, we're getting older, is I'd like her to be able to live independently more. And she can do a lot of things. I think a lot of these kids can. But she certainly needs support. I don't know where the heck we are on the waiting list. But we don't need all the supports, as you said, it's the level of need. We need some supports. Also, she's not likely to ever work full-time. How do you afford a place to live without some assistance from the state? So those are our two big issues. But again, I really thank you for doing all the work that you are. Oh, one thing about the living expense. I know it's like there's not one solution for everyone, but I've always thought that something that would be really great for my daughter and probably some others would be some sort of smallish assisted living, where you have some supports that you can buy into, and so those people can be employed, maybe full-time, but working with a whole group of people in their own apartments, if you will. Maybe then have even like a meal that's served at dinner time, and you buy that into that. It just seems like it offers a lot of flexibility, but at the same time it puts all disabled people together, and that's not exactly what we want either. So, a lot of thoughts, but thank you for everything that you've done.
Thank you. And I have to just say thank you. It's good to see you, Mary. When I'm in this space, I think about starting the special education PTO together many, many years ago. So Mary and I were founding members of that here in West Hartford. And we really worked hard upstairs to get that started and established, to make some changes in the school district. So good to see you.
Good.
Yes. And one thing you're bringing to mind, even when you made the comment, which would be around creative housing, is really what we're thinking about. Because this is a population, they're more and more getting older. We have to figure all of this out. But I think it's really important to remember the individuals. These individuals are loved ones who love to be around other people much of the time, who need the social connection in order to grow. So that being with individuals with disabilities and without is incredibly important, who want an opportunity to contribute, whether it's part-time, a couple of hours, or full-time. And when we did the legislation before, where we would look at different ways that individuals could have job interviews, and it would be, looking at more flexibility, it was kind of built in there. The thing I thought, and that's the frustration for me, is that we can't legislate against bias. And what you're saying is true. When you're over a certain IQ and you go in there, without the workplace really having the preparation for the individuals coming in and the willingness, that is something that could be a barrier, that is a barrier. But we know there's so many positions that are available. There's need right now that could be filled if we could just figure out the right, way to put these two pieces together, these two communities. But I do think it's really important to remember the individuals here, and that putting everyone together in one space is not what we're asking to do. What we're asking to do is have all different types of options, creative options around transportation, housing, employment, and hearing what you're saying tonight helps me to understand that is what I think we're all hearing here, ways to approach and address that. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else who wants to share their concerns, raise any issues? Sure, please. Only because we're being filmed, sorry. It is very far away.
I know we all want to go home. Something that we proposed to DDS years ago, and you may remember because we were trying to do this at the time. When my son was aging out, there were a group of us that had done lots of committees and work together in the schools. And what we were trying to do was to get some of our kids who were more severe, who qualified for more support. My son has Fragile X syndrome. He's profoundly autistic and ID. We were trying to get multi-level houses, and we wanted to buy one and have all our families chip in. We were buying it and asked DDS to staff it. And we wanted to buy the house and have our severe kids on the first floor with full-time staff and have other individuals, like Mary's daughter, who needed some supports but could have meals together, that there was always staff on one floor and that people were, and what we were told is that in Connecticut you couldn't have two CRSs, community residents, CRS versus CLA, or I won't go into it. But the CRSs, you couldn't have two CRSs on the same property. And that really held us back. Instead, we had to buy a home that we now lease to the individuals that, and the Bristol Adult Resource Center staffs it. But we had to purchase the home because there wasn't a space with staff that could assist my son. And yet he had residents financed through the state. So we have to get more creative. Since then, people have said, well, why don't we do this? And we're like, yeah, if we can get that piece fixed. Because I agree, we need alternate solutions. There isn't one, even just our kids that are represented here, we need so many different solutions for everyone. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And many of you have asked, what can we do? What can we do? I think for all of us, thank you for what you have done. So we're hearing you tonight of your years of advocacy. And I think oftentimes when you struggle for so long, it can be hard to take a moment to kind of see that there has been progress. And I hope that this bill, we still have 6 weeks, we got to push for it, but I hope you can see the fruits of your labor, because this bill is about you and what you've told us over the years and how you've advocated and what you've done. And so thank you. We will continue to listen. I've taken tons of notes. I know everyone else has. We have been joined. Yay! Thank you for making it. Representative Gibson. The other thing, as you heard, you can reach out to the Speaker's office. I'll be following up with you. I know we have your names and numbers to kind of get some more information on this. But I want to give each of my colleagues an opportunity to just give some final thoughts before we end. And maybe I'll start the backwards way. Representative Sanchez?
Thank you. All of a sudden, I got a froggy voice. Thank you for sharing all your concerns with us, and I will definitely be working with my colleagues to make sure that we can improve on this and pass it and get the funding that's necessary. I did hear quite a few different concerns which it seems to me that, housing is the key, as well as the support for finding, opportunities for work and transportation. I will be definitely having this on my as one of my priorities. But thank you for this evening.
Yeah, thank you, really. Thanks for coming out and listening, writing notes, and I'm optimistic. And I think to Jillian's point, we're at this moment where 5001 means it's the way that they number in the House, right? It means it's the top priority of the House Democrats. That is because of your advocacy for all those family ARC days that I think there's another one coming up. We'll see you at, next week, right, probably? I think it's next week. But anyway, all of that and where we are and on the precipice of doing just landmark legislation is because of what you all have done. And we're so close. And we're all proudly going to vote yes. And my last kind of comment and plea is that if you have friends, family members who live in different towns in Connecticut, email them and say, please reach out to your senator, reach out to your rep and tell them we got to get this passed and we got to get help for our nonprofits. And it has to be in the budget. So any town, it matters. And thank you again. And I have to be home for my son in 5 minutes or I'm going to be in trouble. So I'm going to sneak out. But you know how to get a hold of me. So thank you again.
Just to follow up, because you got to go, I would say that it can be just so simple as saying that you support 5001 and that you support funding for nonprofits. It doesn't have to be any more detailed than that, Judy. We certainly have everyone's emails. I think that some of that information certainly could come from some of the organizations you all rely on as well to assist in that because one of the key things is, as you noted, just looking up where a state representative is on the CGA website. But my recommendation was mainly based on sometimes the thought is that you have to know everything or know data to send an email and compel your legislator to support something, when in actuality it can be really simple and personal and straightforward, as simple as I support 5001 and our nonprofits, funding for nonprofits. So just asking 5 friends, if you think in a concrete way, 5 friends to do that in several other towns would be really, really powerful. And as Senator Slapp said, every day in these last 6 weeks matters. So your feedback is incredibly important. I know I took down a few notes in particular, especially around employment and transportation. And I think you can tell from the thrust of this bill that there's going to be several areas that we are going to keep coming back to you about and keep needing to work on. And as was said, this is coming to fruition because of you, but we're going to only be able to continue to make progress on some of these items because of you as well. And we are here as a continual resource. I know that we've shared our information at the table about how you can always get in touch with us. But please encourage others who might not have been able to come tonight to reach out to us as well, because we don't want tonight to feel like it's the only opportunity to participate, because we certainly are available at any point in time. So thank you, and I just want to reiterate thanks to Representative Gilchrist for coordinating this.
I'd also like to thank Representative Gilchrist not only for coordinating it, but also for championing this legislation. It is very significant, and you are at the heart of it. You've been working on this for so long, and just thank you for your continued hard work and advocacy. Keep it up. Please send in those letters, and just know that you have voices that stand with you in that space. So I just want you to know that. And two things I wanted to tell you. One is, I was thinking about the driving. We passed in, I think, 2019, one of the first bills I got to vote on was around a blue envelope that is for individuals who are on the autism spectrum, that you can have your contents in there so that if ever pulled by a police officer and they give the envelope, it explains that this is a person driving on the autism spectrum and how the behaviors may appear so that the police officer has that awareness. And so it's a wonderful and very useful tool. So I wanted to let you know that. And if you need that, the DMV certainly provides that. And you can reach out to me because I can get you some too. And the other thing I wanted to say is that I'm getting a very cool birthday present this year. So my birthday is on May 23rd, and at the Capitol, that is IDD and Autism Awareness Day. So I'm very excited. I said it couldn't have happened on a better day, and so I hope you can come out that day and be a part of that recognition as we honor that occasion. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you, Representative. I apologize for being late. I'm State Representative Bobby Gibson. I represent the 15th District. My committees are Education, Appropriations, and General Law. I really wanted to be here on time tonight. Unfortunately, I suffered a broken ankle during the winter, and it threw my back off. And out of all days, I had to go see the chiropractor today. So I'm just coming back from the chiropractor. But it was important for me to be here and to, at least for 5 minutes, to show my face and let you know that I'm going to be working with my delegation. And thank you, Representative Gilchrist. I'm going to give you a call tomorrow. Maybe you can catch me up on some of the things that we talked about, Kate and Tammy as well. But I'm dedicated to work with my colleagues. We work together and make sure that this important piece of legislation passes. So again, thank you for coming out, and just to let you know that it was important for me to be here. Thank you.
Thank you to the team, and thank you all for being here and for your feedback. Have a great night. Can you hear me? That good? Sure. Check 1, 2. Sure. So we're here tonight at the West Hartford Town Hall with the West Hartford Delegation, so state representatives and state senator, to address House Bill 5001, which is the House Democrats' top priority for the legislative session to address the needs of the IDD community, so individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities and autism. And so this bill is looking to increase access to services, address the workforce shortages, support employment opportunities for individuals with IDD, look at transportation, housing, address the waiting list. And so really it is the full spectrum of many of the concerns we've heard over the years coming to fruition.
If people can attend at this event, how can they get in touch with you or learn more?
You can learn more and get in touch by going to the cga.ct.gov website, where you would be able to go to find your legislator. You can go to Jillian Gilchrist, Tammy Exum, Kate Farrar, Derek Slapp, Jimmy Sanchez, or Bobby Gibson, whoever is your state legislator, and you can send us an email or give us a call, and we'll be able to tell you more information, and we'd love to get your feedback.
And then finally, what inspired this to be the top priority?
This has been a need in so many communities across the state for so long, and so the time had finally come. It's long overdue, quite frankly, and we've been hearing from folks in particular in West Hartford for decades about the need to do more for the IDD population. And so the time is now.